Well, my friend, are you all set to go here?
We're
Yeah, yeah.
excited. We're excited to
This is
speak
this
with
is going to be
you.
really fun.
Yeah.
We've been sort of chatting about it since we originally had our first chat, just kind of connecting, and I'm like, this is such a well-needed conversation that I think people need to have. So, for those of you just joining in, welcome back to the Inspiral podcast, and we are continuing on with this series on the illusion of free choice and a return to mastering our own lives. And we came across an interview with Danny with Jacqueline, better known as Oracle Girl for probably a lot of people, and that was where we first came in contact with Danny and Dear Danny's work. And we just thought, man, we really want to chat with this guy because I mean, at this time, as a lot of the people that have been following the work we've been doing in the different series and just trying to bring awareness in lots of different ways, right? To sort of sit within
Investigate.
ourselves, investigate, question things, really try to dive deeper into expressing more of who we are in the world. That's kind of at the heart of it. And a lot of this is a process, right? Sometimes this is this process on just even trying to figure out even what who am I? What do I even want to express in this world? And so we wanted to chat with Dear Danny because he's done it. I mean, he's living it. And this is what people need to have candid conversations around choices and the choices that we're making in this world in a lot of these big areas of our life. So whether we're talking about, parenting or work and what we call a job or schooling for our kids or finances and money. I mean, all of these things, I feel like all of this stuff is up for a relook and then to figure out if we want to still do the same things or if we want to do something different. And when we came across Danny and the work that he was doing, and I'm like, I so appreciate it when I see people talking about it and then putting it into action in the world, because that's ultimately what's going to create these changes that we're all, I think, here wanting to participate and play a role in. And so, Danny, welcome to the show, and thanks so much for your time to spend with us today.
Oh, thank you for having me. But what I would say, Jason, that's a really lovely way to introduce me. I don't think anyone's ever spoke so nicely of me. But look, to be honest as well, like I mean, you don't see her. No one's ever really met my wife, but she's a big driving force in my life as well. So like it's to give her credit, because a lot of the she's the instigator of a lot of these changes, So I do have a lot of gratitude for her having the fluidity and also the courage to sort of take on these new things. And especially we lived in Belgium, and we came to live in a pretty off-grid environment in southern Spain, and we done so knowing that we would be living in a bell tent for the first 2 months whilst we built our yurt. And she done this when she was 7 months pregnant, and she's there doing, like in an off-grid environment, which means that you're constantly having to do stuff. She's just not phased at all, and I feel like it's a big testament to who I am and where I am in my life right now is because I've got such a strong partner.
That's really sweet, Danny. And I feel like in a lot of ways it's a lot of times it's the women that are taking this big first step and knowing. I know when this all started, Taya was like that for me. I mean, I could feel my head was kind of spinning around like, okay, what, trying to understand and figure out what this going on. And Taya just had a really strong feeling from the get-go. And she was the catalyst that got us to pick up and move and make a lot of the big changes that we did. And I've learned to really trust her instincts on stuff. And luckily we've been sort of on a pretty good trajectory together. So it made it a lot easier. I know a lot of couples out there have had some really difficult times with being in different perspectives on what's going on and what actions to take. So I mean, I'm really blessed that Taya also had the foresight to see kind of where things were and put us really on the trajectory that we are.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder as well, like because of we're talking about our connection so much to our Mother Earth now, and how is becoming so much more prevalent in our lives. And I wonder, is that the energy that the female energy that they've already tapped into, and that strength is already flying through them. And it seems maybe that feminine energy is the one that's maybe pushing this now. I mean, us men, we finally come out of our slumber. We stop like put down our chicken wings and turn the football off, and we're like, now, like, come on, let's we better we better move our asses now, you know. So I think there is a lovely, beautiful joining happening. But for sure, yeah, I do see a lot of women out there taking the reins of a lot of the powerful movements out there at the moment.
I remember when at the beginning of this thing, this agenda that started to roll out. I remember because I've been within the yoga meditation community for well over a decade, and I had been within, within groups on social media that I would connect with and converse with. And one of the groups that I was a part of, the group was primarily saying, well, this is what we need to do. We need to be reasonable in how we move forward. And there were probably at the time 2 or 3 females, myself included, who were like, no, there's nothing that sounds right about this at all. And the analogy that came to me at the time that I shared with the group is that when a deer goes into the forest and it senses with every fiber of its body that there is a predator that's nearby, that deer will wholeheartedly trust that instinct and run away, rather than trying to look for affirmation from the rabbit or asking permission from the tiger that's about to bounce on it. Is it time? Is this the moment? But it's like, it's that, we've given birth to 2 of our girls at home, and it's like, when that push comes, when that contraction comes and that urge to push comes, it's undeniable, and you can't intellectualize your way out of it. And I feel like that's what it felt like, and that's what it intimately, on a tangible level, feels like when you're connected to a deeper knowing of what's true. It's undeniable, and there's no reasoning, there's no logic, there's no let's try to lay out the pros and cons of it. I mean, I feel like all these things were tools that we were taught as kids, and oftentimes as I'm seeing it now, they actually programmed us to actually step away from our deeper knowing and our intuition. And for some of us, myself included, those things never felt right to me. Those things felt like I was drawing myself further and further away from what I intuitively knew to be right, what I intuitively knew to be true. And I feel like this time has been a really good testament to reaffirm what that intuition actually feels like, and return more to that. And that is essentially our source connection that I feel like Oracle Girl Jacqueline Hobbs has been speaking of.
Yeah. Yeah, she's got a wonderful way of defining what that is, you know. And I think it's probably fueled, and she talks about it a lot, it's fueled from our love, right? We are just love, aren't we, if we break ourselves all the way down. And I think one of the things in modern day mainstream society, everything is directed to our minds. You know, our achievements are about our minds. You know, the everything, our sensationalism, the way we live, is all directed to the mind. So it keeps us in this mind space. And I feel that instinct and that intuition that comes from somewhere deeper in us, a core. You know, like probably in the heart space region more so. You know, so I feel that maybe you ladies, you've probably maybe a little bit more in touch with that sensitive side of yourself, or the vulnerable side of yourselves, than we are, because we've through you know the battering that masculinity has taken, it's hidden all that from us. You know, we've not been allowed to develop that in a way that you have.
You know, I remember reading a book a long time back, and it was called Indigo Adults. And it was interesting because one of the things they were talking about was in this transition of this Piscean to this Aquarian age. And one of the things that they talked about was one of the shifts is that women were going to be stepping into a different role, because for this whole Piscean age or prior was very much solar plexus dominant, which was generally naturally open in men, was more power and more get things done, and that women were more naturally open in the heart chakra. and that this transition was going to happen as a movement from the solar plexus dominant more to a heart-centered dominance. And so women that were naturally open, that was where things were naturally going to be moving. So they were in a position to lead because they were already open in that way. And that men were going to need to start to open that area because the solar plexus dominance, basically that era was ending. And so I think men that are able to work with that area of the body, work with with that area, that energy that ties in with that heart chakra, and start to open that, then I think that's where you're going to see this transition. And then this whole concept of even what love is, has really turned my world upside down over the past few years, because I understand it from a much broader perspective than what I used to think of, this little box of what I thought love was, and this sort of, only this sort of lovey-dovey kind of gentleness aspect. There's, I've embodied more of the ferocity of love that goes with that. It's not this sort of weakness sometimes that sometimes gets pulled into it. So, but that's how I kind of thought about it, is like this shift in energies that's naturally taking place on the planet, and that women are just in a position where they're naturally more open to that. And so it's going to make sense that they're going to connect to it because it's already there. We're sort of still working towards moving in that direction.
Yeah, I mean, look at the job that they've done on the, like, if you talk about love, and like people say, you say I love, and it's all like it's the love and peace, and yeah, man, we're all like passive hippies sitting around and walking around naked, and it's like it couldn't be further from the truth. The reason we do everything in our lives is for love. The guys that were running over the trenches in the wars, they're doing that for love. They might not realize it and have connected those dots, but it is for love. It's for love of for their families, for freedom, for their countries, for all these aspects that are about love. It's all comes from that. So we're almost like reimagining what love means now. And that's really exciting being a man, because you're sort of going, oh, what, I can be in love and I can be fucking fire as well, And it's like, it's really, really beautiful, because you can understand that is what fuels me. That fuels that love is like, it's a wide spectrum of beautiful color. So it's not just one part of me. It's just sort of like, maybe we can say that where the attack on masculinity has happened, that men were never allowed to feel vulnerable or allowed to cry or allowed to express their hearts, and women by default have been able to do that in societies and stuff, and it's not sort of something that's been pushed down so much or suppressed. But now you're starting to see that this real movement's coming back, where men are like, yeah, man, I'll fucking cry my eyes out. It's fucking good for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's sort of like we're recognizing actually the power in that vulnerability of being able to be all of who we are. We were thinking about this the other day, or talking about this, just what is pure love? What does it mean? Because that, if people are following, I would say anybody that's listening to this, that you should go and check out, or go and see if it resonates with you. But the work that's going on in the purification space with Jacqueline and Oracle Girl, I mean, she just has such a way of articulating things and bringing things back to you. That's what I love about it, is like everything, whatever is said, it's all for you. See what, explore and examine what comes up for you. That's where all of the clearing out of our own stuff happens. But she talks a lot about pure love, and it's this evolving thing of what the fuck does pure love really mean, and how do I embody that, and then what does that mean if I embody that? Now I'm being that in the world. So from Danny, from your perspective, like what for you has pure love evolved into, and how do you know when you are operating from a place of pure love?
I mean, it's such the nuances are so fine, right? There's such a fine line between what I would say is your truth, and is actually you acting out of a pattern that is still waiting to be to leave. And I mean, I've got loads of fucking patterns, and I'm working my way through them every day, So they're always coming out in their sporadic, erratic fucking process. But I guess the thing is for me is that I always said this to Jacqueline, is that the thing that really resonates for me is when she says just relaxing. that is the key. You could just listen to that forever and you would halfway get there, because that is literally it. We only have to just relax into this and stop trying to figure it all out.
Yeah.
And I think when I get into that calm space, then I'm operating from that place which is truthful to me. And so then I can feel it now. I feel like what the words that are coming out of me now are their words that are considered, and they're coming from a place of that is real to me, you know. And so I'm operating from that place of love right now, you know, because it's, and again, like I say, it's like you don't need to be sort of like, oh, I love you and I really love you, because that's not what it's about. That's just a level of conditioning that they've played onto that. So I suppose for me, it's just about trying to, for pure love is sort of, I mean, she said something the other day and I cried my eyes out when I heard it, right? When she said that we have to stop looking at people with their patterns. Try to look at people without their patterns is what she said. And I heard that and I cried my eyes out. And I thought, because I come from a really sort of like edgy, you know, council estate, working class environment in London. And it's like we got dragged up a lot of the time. You know, there was a lot of sort of, you know, quick, spiteful tongues that were shouting things. And it was all in the sort of, it was banter or it was just having a laugh. But actually, it was quite damaging, you know, to people and to their self-esteems. And sometimes I feel myself going through those patterns where I'm judging someone, like just on the way they look or the way they're walking or something. And then I'm like, what the fuck, you know? And so these moments when I hear Jacqueline say something like that, it really makes me feel connected to everyone again, to realize we're all just fucking doing our best, trying our best. You know, we've all got this shit on our shoulders that we're trying to work through. And if we can do it from a place where we've got compassion for each other, then I guess that we're acting out of that love space.
Yeah, that's beautiful, Danny.
And I think really it's we have our work cut out for us, because I feel like the way the systems are currently set up, and it's operating on such a amplified level right now, because they're throwing out everything that they've got at us. But it's yeah, as far as the level of divisiveness and separation that they're trying to create, you see it within the school system, within medicine, within the economy, the banking. It's so easy to say me and you, or us and them, and to operate from that level of pure love where we can step back. And I really feel like this has also been such a key thing for us, is to actually see things from a higher level, a higher perspective, come back to the metaphysical. Because when you are able to step to that level, then you do realize this is all part of God's divine plan, and whatever God means to you, right? I mean, that term has been so politicized that it's hard for us to even use the universe or nature or gold frequency or whatever it is that resonates. But I really feel like from that higher perspective, we can understand things from that place of pure love, and what that means. And I mean, even the conversations we've had with many other guests, including I mean, RJ Spina has been a mind blower for us, similar to Oracle Girl, and Guy Needler as well. They bring the metaphysical teachings through, and we've really valued their input. But to see things from that perspective, then amidst the chaos of currently what's going on the physical level is one thing. But to actually step up and see it from a higher perspective and see the inner workings of what even has to take place in order for all of us to step up to who we truly are is, you know, it's like that quote is like when the Buddha, I think, what was that quote from the Buddha, where when he realizes just how perfect everything is, he, you know, lifts up his head to the sun and laughs hysterically because it's all so perfect.
Yeah. Well, it totally lets you to get out of, I mean, that helps you get out of rights and wrongs, you know, and goods and bads and all of the judgments, because you kind of realize that everybody's got a part in everything. And just because that might be different than what my part feels like to me, it doesn't make it better or wrong or right. Or so that might be just their part and their path that they're kind of moving through. So,
and their part might even be a catalyst in
right.
order to propel us into our part more wholly and wholeheartedly.
Yeah. So it's like,
Yeah.
can you allow people to have their different parts, even if they're very different? You know, to me, it's a powerful place of pure love to be able to let people have their own perspectives while we are still steadfastly hold strong to our own inner knowings around stuff. So it doesn't mean you have to loosen all your boundaries on things, but you can still be in a loving place while still having a strong sense of your own individuality.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, for me, the only thing is, and it comes up, is that like, is if someone is causing harm
Yeah.
by their patterns, and then for me, it feels like I'm well within my rights to step in, you know, especially if it's for children or someone vulnerable. And this is the problem with the whole, like, I would have would have called myself someone who's gone into a lot of the spiritual teachings. You know, I used to listen to Ram Dass like religiously, and I've you know dabbled in plant medicines and stuff, and been in retreats, and so I understand that approach. But when Jacqueline comes along and she drops a fat bomb on the table and she says, oh, you know, there's another sauce, you know, and I'm like, what? There's another sauce? Well, I thought it was just us acting out all this fuckery. And she's like, nah, there's another sauce. And you're like, oh, okay, right. So this pattern behavior is actually being beamed into our heads by some kind of actual physical infrastructure technology, you know, that is causing us to act out this stuff, so we never reach our true potential. So then it then becomes impersonal.
Mm-hmm.
This is the real, like, for me, is something that I've found very interesting recently, because it has really allowed me to take on, like you say, to a different perspective to being embroiled and embedded into that war, you know, of knowing that there's despicable and abhorrent things going on in the world that I can't control. But to know that these things are not going on because of some kind of personal attack on human beings. It is literally another source, which is like a cancer, which is just trying to take more control, and it's doing it in a very perverse way to us. And so once we understand that, then you kind of go, oh, right. So like, what do we do? Oh, we just have to be love and light. Okay, fuck it. Let's do it. And then you actually see that force starts to back off. I actually said it in this video today. I don't know if you watched the whole thing, but I was talking about a track last night I'd listened to of Jacqueline's. And it went into me, you know, like I get into these states sometimes where I'm so relaxed, I can actually, like, I'm feeling, she always used to say that don't listen to the words. They're just frequency. They're there just to trigger parts of you that you don't even know is happening in your system, you know, which we've got a primitive understanding of what our vessel is and how advanced that is, you know. And I feel these, sometimes I get into this state of relaxation where I actually feel this stuff happening. And I was an orb of light last night. I was my truth, you know. And as I was feeling like that, I felt like there's something else here. You know, I'm in my little yurt and I'm sitting there and I've got all my two kids next to me, one in bed next to me, my partner, and everyone's snoring. And I'm like, there's something else here, you know, and I'm not scared of it because I understand my ability and all of our abilities, you know, so I don't have any fear about it. But I was like, well, I'm not having that. And I'm sort of gone into this sort of like feeling of this orb, and I can feel this whole white light around me, you know, and my eyes are closed, but I'm seeing it through the perspective of my third eye, I guess you would call it, which is it's just seeing this darkness retreat. You know, and I've had this several times, you know, and I know this is not this is not a dream. I'm fully awake. I'm fully resonant, and it's another source. And it's literally, I know I said this in a video earlier, and I don't mean to like sort of make fun of it, all right, but it's like it's the fucking Matrix we're living in, you know, it's Mr. Smith, Agent Smith, you know, like they're trying to take more and more, and they're trying to control this what we are, you know, try to take over this other source. And when we start to realize that it's literally like that. It's like a computer game, and we have got unfathomable strength in us. And when we connect with that, and it is love, because when you start to vibrate in that light, you are almost in a state of ecstasy. You know, it's a beautiful, there's no time, there's no concern, there's nothing. You just realize that you are exactly where you're supposed to be. You're all connected to all this other beautiful fucking people. And we are here right on time to take care of business.
Mhm.
You know?
That I remember when that conversation came up, and it was around the idea, it kind of took the religiosity around what was going on
Yeah.
out of it. It made it very just kind of like robotic, and not dangerous, because it's like it's almost like an algorithm. It's like there's
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
program running, and this is where we're going. And just like a computer program would, there's no sort of, like you said, very impersonal. It's not like like we're out evil to do this. What's
No.
happening could be perceived as being very evil, but it's just an algorithm. It's just moving in a certain direction, and that's sort of how the program's going to go. But where that bounces back at us is, as that's taking place, that like all of that then is there to see, how does it make us feel? Like one of the things that came up just yesterday in the reboot last night that we were listening to was specifically around money, but she said to really check in with your body before you make any decisions around finances. And I would say, like, check in with your body before you make any decisions around anything. Like that's kind of the first step, but that's kind of what we've in so many ways separated from, because there's just certain things that are done now according to the way the system runs. But
Yeah.
if we're really touching in on how that makes us feel.
Something tangible, like something as,
Yeah.
just to give practical examples for people to consider, like wearing a mask. Like, how does that really make you feel? Like, even when you go somewhere and someone tells you that you can't enter a facility. Like the other day, I was accompanying my father to the hospital for his appointment to translate for him. He's not doing very well health-wise. At the entrance of the hospital, we were ushered into this area where two people were asking us some health questions, and they asked us to put on a mask. And she basically said that I could not accompany him to his appointment until I supplied my proof of vaccination. It's like, on a really basic level for people to consider, how does that make you feel when you're confronted with another person telling you that you have to do something prior to you needing to go about your day?
And especially when it's tied with a loved one that you're caring for too. It just amplifies it even that much more.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the issue is that one of the things is that you probably get from your audience and I get from mine is a lot of the time we're preaching to the converted, aren't we? So it's sort of like, there's probably a lot of people going, yeah, fuck that, I'm not wearing a mask, while they're listening to this. But then there's people in the mainstream society, that what I would like to call it, is that they're numb.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of these people are numb, because of their health choices, because of the food that they put into their body, because of their habits in life. A lot of people are numb. A lot of people don't really care about they don't have that connection to be able to know whether that is morally incorrect for them. Their moral compass is shut down. And then you've got the other people who are they're so sort of wanting to do the right thing, which is actually a nice thing somewhere along the line.
Yeah.
And they're doing it for the sake of, thinking that they're saving people or helping people, So again, it's like we come back to this thing. It's like, it's not really personal, is it? But it's just for us, each of us, to all live in our absolute sovereignty. And in whatever situation, you could put me in a fucking stadium and there's a million people there and they're all going to take a knee, and I'm not kneeling. You can put a bullet in my head, I'm not kneeling. That's just not happening for me. And there's lots of people out there like me. So it's just about us, isn't it? It just comes back to how you want to live your life, and how every single one of us is sovereign, whether we know it or not. We are, and we have a choice in every single walk of our lives, in every single part of it, to take on the most sovereign approach that we can every time. And sometimes that means you being a little bit flexible, and it means you being a little bit fluid here and there, because like you're in a hospital with your real father or something. You don't want to start kicking off, and you don't want to like set up this whole scene, and you want to protect his calmness around him and whatnot. So there is, each situation I find is very unique.
Yeah.
I did, by the way. I refused. I said that it's personal and private information and I wouldn't be disclosing it. And she ultimately called the supervisor. And then I watched her. She wasn't going to do it. And then I said, please do call your supervisor. And she reluctantly did it probably 5 minutes later. And the supervisor came and escorted me up to the appointment. And I was able to accompany him regardless. But but I think what you're saying is really important too. It's what Oracle Girl refers to as personal instructions. And we
exactly.
really do need to each figure out what our personal instructions is and just follow that.
Yeah, I mean, it really makes it simple.
Mhm.
And I think the thing that screws and messes with people's head is that we're so not used to taking things kind of on the fly, you know, and allowing for the spontaneity of our own personal instructions to surface at any given moment. We want to have a fucking plan. We want to know already like 10 years down the road where we're going. And, you know, and that, and from how I understand it now, it's like, that's just not the way it's going to work, and you're going to miss out on all of the real juiciness that we're supposed to be connecting to along the way, that's ultimately, you know, kind of in our highest good. We just have to slow it down. You know, that's like the just relaxing, because you can't do that when you're up in here. You can't access that information. It's got to be from that just relaxing place. I mean, it's, you know, the first thing she says, and our kids will say it at the same time with her. We're all lying in bed, and you know, my 5 and 6 year old, just relaxing. And I mean, it's just a fun thing now for the family. But it's like you said, you're halfway there by just doing that. It's like that's the first step. You slow things down and then allow yourself to have those personal instructions surface and see where they take you. Then I think the thing we bump up against, at least I know what I've bumped up against with this in this process, is sometimes the personal instructions come up and you're kind of like, oh shit. You know, like, so it's not like it's always like rainbows and butterflies when the personal instructions surface. Sometimes that means you're going to move in a direction that might, you know, change things up in your life that you're not used to. So, you know, for people that are listening that are just sort of exploring with this, it doesn't mean that everything then just flows in this super easy way. But
so the personal instructions that you're referring to, they're like inklings or things
inner
that you're feeling
knowings
drawn
or
to do.
yeah, or
The
inspirations.
pulls.
I think it's individual and what it feels like. Like, I mean, for me, you get a body knowing of it. I get a physical sensation in my body. I sometimes feel this in certain ones, like an urge, like, but not coming from a fearful place, like a just like a gut kind of, I need to move in a certain direction. And other times it's a strong inspiration of just, this is the direction that I want to go. But that doesn't always mean that it's in alignment with the 10 or 15-year plan that you kind of mentally brought up.
But like the thing is that, like you said, that our bodies, these inklings, we've got a very, very special signaling system that is trying to tell us this stuff, you know. And we're so not used to living like this, especially like for me. Like, I mean, I talk fast, I think fast, I act fast. And so, like, if I'm in a situation, I'll give you an example. Actually, I had a conversation about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and me and my partner were discussing money with another couple of people, and about our land, and there was sort of something that I felt truly was unjust, and I all this stuff was happening. Like, oh my god, no, this is gonna fucking explode! Like, you know, like, stand back, everyone. You know, and I was in the process. I had a piece of cake in my hand and a cup of tea, and I was like, and I'm like trying, like, I can't even fucking drink it anymore because I'm so angry. I'm gonna break the cup. And so I was like, wow, what's happening to me? And I'm like, this is all happening while everyone at the table's looking at me, you know. So I haven't got much time to try and get out of this. And I'm sort of like trying to find words, but they're like, it's like my teeth have all come out, and I just can't communicate like I usually do. And I know that's because my body's going, no, this is not right. You are not having this. But because I'm acting so instantaneously from that, instead of going home and sitting with it and sort of like getting more and more annoyed about it, and going, why didn't I say something, you know? My body was asking me to, listen, we need to deal with this now. This has got to come out now because you're not carrying this around for the next 2 weeks. Yeah. And so I slowly, steadily started to talk my way through it. And like this, like Hulk was coming out of me. And then the more I sort of sat with it, and I was sort of like saying things like, you know, I'm really feeling this is unfair in myself at the moment. You know, I really feel like this is unfair, and I want to talk about that. And all of a sudden, it just started to flow, and the feeling, oh my God, like the feeling of connection to myself, and like the calmness that went around everyone in the end. And we all understand that money, because it's become such an astringent part of our lives, that it's one of the most difficult conversations to have, you know, when you deal with people and deal with money, you know.
Mhm.
And so the people that we were dealing with, like talking to, we are so close now, because we broke down something that day, and it only happened because I listened to something that was coming up in me. If I would have ignored that, which I've been doing for 40 years, you know, then it would resurface somewhere else, and it would come out in a different form, in somewhere which is not, it's not meant to come out. And so if we can listen to those fine parts of ourselves, it wasn't very fine for me at that point, but if you can listen to those little nods from your system trying to tell you that you shouldn't be agreeing to that, then I think we all start to get stronger and stronger at doing it. You know, like the next time I do it, it's going to be easier for me, is what I'm trying to say, you know. And the more we practice living in this sovereign way and to govern ourselves, and sometimes that might mean we have to just sit back and just go, hold on a minute, I need to consider this. You know, I'm not going to answer right now. I need to consider this, and really tap into it, because it's become such a dormant mechanism for us that we're not really, we don't know how to use it anymore, you know. And like you can't really knock people out anymore, because it's not the 80s. You know.
And that's the thing too. It's like when you say that, there's been so many things that we have just on a subconscious level, unconscious level, even agreed to. There's been so many agreements that we have made. Like our computer shut down, and we're not even exactly sure how the graphics on this one particularly is going to show up, because it's a backup computer that we're using that is probably 10, 11 years old.
Well, and no joke, what was really funny was literally,
Yesterday.
and the computer is fairly new, and
2.5 years old.
and we're there, and Taya's like, I'm gonna put a piece of tape over the camera. And no joke, the next day the entire screen blew up. I have to get an entire top of the laptop, the whole screen, the thing blew up. And
MacBook Pro.
yeah, and I'm like,
and then
wait, coincidence or not, I don't know, but that was
the
weird.
day prior to that, our cell phone, we only have one cell phone between the two of us. One by one, all the apps started to malfunction and cut off. Like you can't even access the apps anymore. So,
so we spent the day at the tech shop.
Yeah. So yesterday we were at the tech shop, and thankfully we were able to use this backup computer to record this. But when we were at the tech shop, he basically reset everything. And so I got my cell phone back, and of course, whenever you do these updates, these new sort of agreements come up. And I was curious about what had changed. And I went through every single app, and I wanted to know what exactly I was agreeing to, because a lot of these programs, it's like, just by virtue of you using this device, you have agreed to their terms and services. So you might not necessarily even need to check the box or opt in, but by using this, you're opting into everything that they're putting out there. You're agreeing to it.
Yeah, when you scroll down to the bottom and then hit agree, so that you can use the app.
Yeah.
And then once the app is in, even if you get it off of your home screen, it's still there. Like it's telling you that it will not delete from your system, and therefore it's still tracking your face recognition, how often you use the app,
or sharing information with some of the different apps too. It's
with third party.
Yeah.
And I was noticing all these things, and you know what it's been bringing up for me is, I don't want to use these devices. I don't want to opt in to and have agreements to any of my information being shared in a way that I'm not consciously agreeing to.
Yeah.
And we had this conversation yesterday. It's like, where we are right now, it's like there's kind of no other option. Like if we wanted to converse with you and if we wanted to connect with you, this is the technology that we need to use at this time in order to do what we feel is important work to be doing in order to share and bring greater attention to what's happening and have these conversations. So hopefully people may even get inspired or reevaluate where they're at and understand and realize that there's other ways of doing things. So we feel like this is important to do. But at the time, there's no other technology that's available for us that is a better way of doing this in a more sovereign way, or one that respects my privacy. So it's like,
I think for if you're using it for that reason, for me that overrides all that other shit.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I feel like it completely transmutes it, because like to me, it's almost like you're using it against them. You know,
Yeah.
and I actually really don't give a fuck about what they know about me. You know, I really couldn't care less. When people say, "Oh yeah, you shouldn't say that they're listening," I say, "I couldn't give a fuck." I'll tell them. I'll walk straight into fucking Facebook and I'll tell them, "Listen, your time's up. We're coming back." You know. So like to me, I've got there's a community here in southern Spain where we are, and they're very much like, it's everyone's sort of, you can't say that, and you go into these meetings and they put their like the phones away and stuff. It's like, that's acting from a place of fear. Like, what do you give a shit? Like, they know everything anyway, so what are we hiding anymore? Let's get out in front of this and let's just say, like, I don't care what you know about me. I don't care if you know everything about me, because I'm here wearing it all in truth. Yeah, there's nothing for me to hide. You're the ones who work in the shadows. We work out in the light.
Mm-hmm.
That's really beautiful. It actually makes me think of how Oracle Girl has been speaking of money. So even though its inception or its introduction within our realm has been based on maybe nefarious reasons, we have the power now to purify even that by the way in which we are using it in a higher sort of way.
And it's just, it's like when undo, transmute, generate. It's
Yeah.
sort of like we're in a position, and it totally makes me think. I love that analogy too, Danny, because it's like in that flame of pure love, you burn up everything else that comes in contact with it. So, and I like that too, and that feels a lot more empowering. I think the important part is be aware of be more aware of what you are doing. You know, I think that's the first part, is just like, rather than just blindly agreeing to something, I think part of it is, you know, to be more sovereign means to know what you're doing, you know, like from a medical perspective, to me, it's sort of like, it's informed consent. It's like, know what you are doing so you can make a free choice based on the information that is at hand. So then you can responsibly choose what you want to do. And then you can say, yeah, screw it, I'm going to do that anyways, and I put up whatever I want to do. But you're at least the one that's actually, you're in charge of that. You've taken ownership of that and you're putting yourself in there, right?
Absolutely. Because a lot of these, like, if you think of some of what we would have thought of to be the most watertight documents for human rights, have just been ripped up.
Yeah.
In the last couple of years, you know, they've just been absolutely ripped up. So does that mean because that piece of paper no longer exists, we have no rights anymore? No, that's ridiculous. You know, like, it's something inherent in us that it doesn't go anywhere. You know, it's like you say, it's this infinite light that it cannot go out, and it represents our sovereignty. And so for me, like, these things are, of course, you're absolutely correct, is that we have to be aware about what we're getting into and what we're supporting, especially when it comes to money, because money carries such an energy for us. You know, it's such an importance. But if we're spending that, you know, like, how can money be bad if you're giving an old lady who's got no money some money on the street and she's going to buy food for her family? I mean, any evil that money's done before, even if it's come from some horrible background, it's just been transmuted. It's now good. You know. So I feel like we've always, again, this is, and I think I wanted to say this earlier, actually, and I'm glad I've remembered, is that one of the big issues I feel in our human development at the moment is that we're all starting to realize, there's a little light going on up there, and we're going like, oh, is that us? You know, that's pretty powerful, isn't it? And they go, I'm a bit scared of that power. You know, I'm actually want to stay down here and just carry on going to do me shopping and mind my business, because we're not. it feels like we're sort of like we're at the adolescence of understanding what we're truly capable of. And I think that is very frightening for a lot of people. And I'll be honest, it's a little bit frightening for me. And I'm someone who I harness it quite well to a certain degree. But I do feel that. I do start to think, cool, is that we're really capable of this shit now. You know, we're really actually, this stuff is materializing before our very eyes. And that can be quite frightening because it means ripping up the playbook. It means completely and utterly redoing and reimagining what we've been told.
Yeah, that's a conversation we were having just before we got on with you, was around the idea that where this pulls up fear for a lot of is that it really is going into unknown, and unknown naturally kind of sparks some sort of fear and some trepidation around things because you don't know, right? But and it requires then a certain amount of trust and faith, that you're going to be held to some point, right? One of the things that I think Jacqueline was talking about just the other day was around nature, right? And when we are operating from that place and allowing those personal instructions to spontaneously come up as they do, that nature will kind of meet us. It's like we're met by it.
Yeah,
and
lovely.
and what we were talking about with this is, it's like, this is where we are. It's like when we are listening to those personal instructions, then we put something new into the world that would not be there unless we're doing that. And in the process of doing that, we start to create new opportunities to kind of land on with it,
Yeah.
and so it's this really neat, scary, but it's this exciting sort of thing too, where it's like, okay, I'm going to put my foot out there, and in the process of me putting my foot and making that step, something's going to come up and I'm going to meet it, and it's
And I know that's been a thing of mine too, where it's like, am I going to mess this up? Like, is this coming from a place of ego? Is this coming from a place of purity? And it's a constant sort of checking in with my intention,
Yeah.
and also asking for guidance is a regular thing that I do as well. I don't know about you,
it's
but
like a surrender.
yeah, it's may I act from the purity of who I truly am, and may I constantly be in direct connection with source. And Father Guide Me is another one that RJ recommended that feels really soothing for me too, and I go to often. And how it could pan out or show itself is what I'm trying to put forth, or is my intention ultimately tied into a service to self? Like, is it wanting to gratify myself, solely myself in some way, or is it ultimately service to others? And I feel like that for me has also been an indicator of, am I acting from a place of ego, or am I acting a place that's more connected to my higher self or my true energetic self, or whatever other.
And a lot of times, I don't know about you, Danny, but I find like if I get that inkling, that sort of knowing, or that real inspired sort of feeling that to me feels like that's my spontaneous personal instructions surfacing. If I follow that, that ultimately is just in the highest good, period. It's like, even without wondering about it, it's like it just ends up being, at the bigger picture, it's good for, it's in the highest good, period. So whatever that's going to end up looking like, I feel like then it just is going to run its course like that anyways.
Yeah, I mean, and if you're like really definite about it, then that is what it is, right? Because if there's that moment where we can sit and we can analyze whether that's coming from a correct space and stuff, then we are opening ourselves to then the conversation. But if it's definite, and there's no room for error there, you just know what you're doing,
Yeah.
And again, it's like, for me, it's not so much like the I'm sort of acting out from ego, but it's more sort of for me like, it's like, which pattern is this now?
Yeah.
Like, what pattern? Why did I say that earlier? A lot of my patterns are they come from a place of sort of, I don't know. It's like I'm trying to always push my sovereignty now, so it's like a little bit over the top. It's like You know, why haven't I got X amount of beans? You've got that guy next to you. You put more beans on his plate. It's like, whoa, dude, they're just beans. You know, relax.
What
It's
comes up, Danny, for you when you know you're acting from a pattern? What's sort of a tell for you that when you know you're kind of acting out from a pattern?
shame, ridicule. You know? I suppose me and Hannah, my partner, we talk about it all the time. You know, like we're getting the confrontations that we used to have with very rare. You know, we get on very well, but there's times when you know you got 3 kids and you're fucking screaming and shouting, "What? Go on here!" There's a baby going in your ear, and it's what the fuck? What? Scott, I don't know where the keys are. You had them, and it's like just all like this, you know. And you sort of have these moments where you know you can go in, I can go into my cave, you know, and I can want to there's something, the way I've acted or the way that Hannah spoke to me or something is hit me, something's triggered in me, and I want to shut down now. And that could have in the past, that could have lasted several hours or something, you know, and then I would harbor that, and then later on at night she'd go, "You're right, Don." I'd be like, no, I'm not all right, no, I'm not, you know, and there would be this sort of resentment that I couldn't release. And now I find that it's happening in light speed. You know, it's happening so quickly, it's almost instantaneous. It's like we're going like, no, the fuck. What the fuck is that? It's just ridiculous. It's just a funny thing, you know, like this, it's becoming. So I feel that I'm catching it now. I'm catching it more and more quickly. And I suppose it just comes from, it's just trying to be as humble and as vulnerable as you can be all the time, you know, to know that, listen, there's no one judge. There's no one doing a scorecard above our heads somewhere. You know, it doesn't matter what you do. And it doesn't matter, like, even if you do things that sometimes, you know, I very, very rarely shout at my children. Very, very rarely. But I've got twin daughters that are 4, and I've got a renegade son who's 10 months old, and he's already running. You know, he's running around. And we're living a little yurt together. And sometimes you feel like, well, I'm just going to be like that rocking and fucking one of the extras in one
Yeah.
Find a corner.
Just trying to find a quiet corner I can blow my own head off, you know.
A quiet corner in your yurt.
Yeah, exactly. And so, like, you sometimes we don't act out of that place, and that's all right, because it's coming to the surface, so we can identify with it, and we can say, actually, do you know what? I'm ready to let that go now. You know, I don't want to be that dude anymore. And sometimes that comes with a lot of grief and a lot of suffering, like sobbing and pain and crying, and that's cool. It's absolutely cool. You know, we're not here to try to work it out all in one click of a finger. It's got to be, it's the journey is much more important than the destination for us all, you know.
And I love that about this process is that again, it's like, you know, I know same thing. And I think shame is actually a big one. I almost feel wherever I have to like kind of feel like this, that's definitely a big tell where I'm almost ashamed to present myself into the situation. Yeah, I think that's a big one. I think a lot of that stuff comes into that feeling wherever we feel like we just can't bring ourselves into it. That's a pattern to be broken down. But what's so beautiful about this process is like when that stuff comes up, shame is a part of the purification that comes up to feel it, to see it, so that you burn it off and kind of recognize the bullshit that it sort of is. It's all part of these patterns, and let it burn off. And you know, it's a neat process when you can work with your partner on this too, because I know this is something we found too. If I even look back from 2 years ago to where it is now, it's like when stuff comes up, I don't care who you are, you're in relationships, you're going to trigger each other around stuff like partners, kids, like it's, you know, it's a crucible. Stuff's going to come up and shake your world. Where I see these parents that like, oh, don't, it's like, I don't know if you're a parent and you can't have something come up at some point. I mean, like, God, they got to be big triggers, you know, but it's that as it comes up, it's there to see. And that's all part of the purification. So it's like none of it's quote unquote bad or wrong or anything. It's just, it's all part of the process.
Yeah, even I feel like even the yelling and the screaming, like so often it's been classified as this is good, this is bad, this is proper way of dealing with emotions, this is not a healthy way of dealing with emotions. But it's like emotions are emotions, they're energy in motion. So it's like when it comes up, just grant it the movement that it needs.
Yeah.
So whether you're, you know, taking a walk through the forest or going in the bathroom and just screaming, or, you know, I'm able to yell at Jay, and our relationship is, we're so fortunate. It's so solid. Like, it's like, I've put this guy through a lot in the past 10 years, and it's like, he keeps coming back. He's there. He doesn't go anywhere. And it's, we know we have each other's back. And even when there's a disagreement or there's a misunderstanding, we know it's just that in our hearts of hearts. So it's like, I'll yell at him and I'll say, I didn't mean that. Like, just effing listen to me when I'm trying to talk to you. And it works itself out. Like, it's, we're there for each other, and we can bounce off of each other. And
When we catch our own stuff in the
we
process of
yeah,
it, I
for
think.
sure.
So,
We're open
so
to that
like
as
when you're
well.
saying, when you're talking to your wife and then all of a sudden you start laughing because you kind of see that what the emotion is often about is just the pattern. You know, I often would call it, like, you know, I literally did this once where I made this sculpture and I called it Midnight. And I literally, it felt like this dark, heavy, that would just like suck itself inside me and kind of take over. And I literally made this sculpture and put it up on the bookshelf, so to kind of remind me that it's always kind of lurking there. And it gave me some perspective to kind of realize when something felt like it was coming in that wasn't inherently me anymore, right? And then it could kind of separate from it. And then I think in that separation and observation, it kind of just diffuses and you see it for what it is.
Well, it's the hall of mirrors, isn't it?
Totally,
Yeah.
totally a hall of mirrors.
Absolutely.
It's just like, I fucking hate it when you do it. Oh shit, it's fucking me again. You know?
Yeah, yeah.
And
Always keeps coming back.
Yeah, yeah. And in every part, you know, like, I mean, we can pretty much anything that irritates us is because it's signaling something inside of us that is, you know, can carry out the same annoying, irritating process.
Yeah.
But
You know,
I suppose for me, it's sort of our relationships now. They're taking a new level of depth. You know, the connection's getting so much more stronger. Is because we are being forced to communicate now. There's no running away anymore. There's no hiding anymore from any of this. You know, and fortunately, the world affairs have created that, haven't they? You know, they've created some incredible amount of very serious conversations that we've got to have with our families and our friends, and everyone's starting to really sort of you know, having to put themselves out there a little bit more, you know, and what they stand for. And of course, when you do that, then you're met with the opposing punch in the mouth. And I suppose really we're in, like you just said, we're then getting to know ourselves even better in this mechanic, you know, in working through this stuff with anyone. We're learning more about ourselves.
mm-hmm.
You know, we were talking about money earlier, and I just wanted to go back to that briefly because there is some interesting movements here happening in Canada at the moment where maybe you can
Oh
speak
yeah,
a bit.
when I was paying for my computer service yesterday to try to get the computer going, and the guys that were helping us out, awesome. They're really sweet guys, really integrous and honest. I really appreciated being able to come to find them in this process of working with all this computer stuff
At the tech store.
at the tech store. And I was going to pay them cash, and they actually preferred Visa. And I was like, you prefer Visa? They said, yeah, well, with our bank account that we have, the business plan, we actually get charged 2% penalty for every cash deposit that we make. So it was, and it was so funny because it was literally like the day after, 2 days after the reboot around money and being aware of that kind of stuff. I was like, you know,
that Oracle girl had put it.
yeah, it's just, you know, it's just so interesting how, again, it reminded me right away. It just reminded me of this. You may hear 5 and 6-year-old destroying the house upstairs. So
with
if
grandma
that
and
comes
grandpa.
through, but it totally reminded me of this logarithmic sign of way of just moving, sort of corralling the herds into a certain movement. It's like, you know, we're not gonna, you know, people want to use cash and everything. I'll go, well, we'll just make it, give you a penalty for using cash. So it makes it easier for you to naturally move in this digital currency that we're trying to move towards
In the name of convenience.
in the name of convenience and all these different things. So I mean, that blew my mind, because usually, people like cash, and now it's actually becoming, they didn't even want cash.
No, it's crazy, isn't it? In the old days, it'd be like, can I have cash? Is that all right? A bit of cash,
Absolutely.
But someone sent me a photo from a London, I think it was a London or a UK arena yesterday, and it said on there in a big, massive billboard inside the arena, we are now a cashless venue, which is for your own health and safety.
Yeah.
That's what it said.
Everything's for health and safety. That's actually a tagline now, that when you see it, it's kind of like gives you a little bit of a double take to decide if that really is, or
Is it really? Are you sure about that?
my health and safety. I'm not sure anymore.
But I think if these situations, they are going to force us into a direction, you're right, but they're going to force us away from the system, aren't they? Because we're going to be the people who are just going like, listen, I'm not gonna have a microchip in my head, thanks, thank you for asking, but I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
And then we're going to move into what I always call like micro societies, where I think we're all going to trade with each other in ways we're not really going to. I don't think we're going to see a lot of this stuff. I think a lot of it's just going to happen, and we're going to hear about it. I don't think it's going to affect us so much because we're so prepared.
Yeah, I mean, it's already happening where we are. We had an interesting experience when we were in Mexico, and I want to go back to it because I want to really commend the folks who have turned their lives upside down and completely done things outside of the box and outside of the comfort zone because they were feeling strongly pulled to opt out of the system. But with regards to when we returned to Canada, back to Vancouver Island, where we currently are, there's been a strong movement, and as far as the people who did want to step out of the system within their local environment, where so many communities have been built and created. There's almost 300 people now, over 300 people just within our small area that have groups together. And we have a farming group, we have a building group, we have hunting group, plant and foraging, gardening
health and
group,
wellness.
health and wellness. And these different groups have been created in order to support one another. And there's also sharing and swapping items. So like if you have something and you want to prefer to have something else, whether it's children's clothing, a different size, you can put that up on the Signal site as well. And I love it because it's naturally opened up this possibility to be able to opt out of any monetary system. Like there's just trading going on. Like we got, I think 12 garlic bulbs, and the woman who put it up, she said, I prefer no cash, but if you're into health and wellness and would want to trade, then I'd be more open to that. But it's like this trade, this bartering system is already happening in our community, and I'm sure so many others around the world as well. And you're right, it's as far as what is being enforced and what many are being coerced into doing is inevitably going to bring about this completely other way of being, which may not have even been something that we would have been inclined to do in the near future. But because we're not opting into the system, into this idea that they're selling, we're creating these other possibilities.
And it's like that idea of like, you make that first step by making that choice, and all of a sudden, like these new opportunities and new ways of doing things start to emerge because there's a need for it. There's a desire for it. And through more and more people making those sort of choices, whatever that choice is for you, it's through your own personal instructions will tell you what choice to do. But if you're touching in on your body and sort of paying attention to how that feels and not going along with things that don't feel okay inside you and making different choices that do feel more in alignment, that's where we create these next cool things like that. I mean, yeah. I was so impressed when we came back. I mean, we had a strong calling to come back here, and I'm pretty sure it's because there's this big community developing here too that's really in alignment. And I just so impressed with it every day. I just feel like it's growing and it's expanding and it's interconnecting and supporting. And I mean, that's that is like this micro communities that I think we're going to just keep developing for people that don't want to be in this other system. This is where we create our own systems.
And if you think about if they all start popping up everywhere, and then they all start trading with each other, then that's it. It's game over. Like, it's completely done then. Like, and that's what this is when people start going like, it's funny. I had a conversation online today with someone. They were saying like we need government, and I was just like, dude, that's proper conditioning. Like they're making you feel that you can't take control of your own life. You need to have these bodies and these agencies to be able to, like you say, like corral you into where they want you to be and how you should act, which is just crazy. Then that can't be what the human fluid experience is about. So I understand that when people say, yeah, you want to take London and try to not have a government or a police force, okay, that's crazy. But if you took a very small neighborhood in London and said, you guys just sort yourself out, and then the neighborhood round the corner went, yeah, we're going to sort ourselves out, and then all these other neighborhoods done the same, then it happens. It happens by default.
Well, and I think part of that is like, as there is a continual, however you want to say it, but whether there's a continual shift in perspective, a shift in consciousness, a shift in frequency as far as what ultimately communities want, right? And that it is more based out of pure love. That community also will kind of self-govern, right? There will be, they will, not through a formal government system, but I think there will be an interaction that will naturally occur through that sort of dynamic.
Yeah, there's going to be people who, so everyone starts to find their strength and their place in that, don't they? And so I think we all end up just knowing, you just start to, when you start to connect with people, and this is the thing, is that they've created this world where we're all very isolated, and they create things like social media, which is the antithesis of being social, and it's actually designed to keep us in this very insular, tiny little experience. But if we break out of that and we start to connect with everyone, then you realize that your communication skills just become honed, and your ability to be able to find your way and what works for you becomes honed. And then everyone else is doing the same. So then it just becomes quite a well orchestrated machine. But the problem is we're not there yet. So of course we're going to have lots of stumbling blocks along the way, and we're learning to, relearning or unlearning how to communicate with one another. And so there's going to be times where we're going to be feeling like, that I'm not being heard, or I'm not getting my point across, and I want this for this community and stuff. And it's just, there's no one can tell you what's right or wrong. You're only in your own system can you figure it out in your own body,
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because it's definitely not, when people speak of getting on a path that feels more authentic to whatever you want to name it, whether it's their higher self or their own true source connection, oftentimes we think that it's going to be smooth and easy and seamless, and it's not. I mean, when we were in Mexico, exactly. When we went to Mexico, and then before we knew it, Canada had kind of cut off the possibility of returning unless you had received your pass. And so we decided, okay, so maybe it's time that we just settle in Mexico and we just find a place to live. And so we lived there for a period of just under a year, and we met so many families that were leaving their homeland of anywhere in Europe, anywhere in Canada, anywhere in North America, like loads and loads of people, whether they were singles, couples, or entire families moving with their young children, babies, or teenagers.
Yeah, some even left while pregnant and gave birth while they were there.
Yeah.
In order to even have citizenship.
Yeah, but it was really interesting because, from the outside, you might think, oh, like cowards, they're running away, they're not facing the good fight, if you're on this side of it. But my parents were immigrants. We left Iran to move to Canada as refugees over 3 decades ago. And it's like, when there's war going on in your homeland, and you ultimately feel like it's not a conducive place for your family to live and breathe and to be, then you look for other options. And when we were in Mexico, there were so many families that I mean, it touched my heart. It warmed my heart to speak to them and to hear their stories. In so many instances, I thought to Jay, like, it would be so great if we can just actually all sit down and share these stories, because they're so rich and they speak so highly of the level of courage that people have, and like getting up, leaving their jobs, not knowing what they're moving into, just selling their house, selling their business, or leaving their business altogether, and just, you know, booking that flight, that charter flight before, you know, the borders are finally cut off, to just flee the country that is the only country you've known all your life and for generations past. I mean, I had
Go ahead.
I had such love and admiration for seeing what people were, the level of courage that people were tapping into to make certain life choices.
When you see a spectrum on it, right? It's sort of like everybody's going to be in different places as far as what feels right for them at certain points in time. And it was kind of neat to see a fairly large group of people that what felt right for them at that time was to make big changes, like all at one time, you know, and go there and really start over. So, you know, whether that's for you and to make big changes and do that, then awesome, you know, you can do it. I think that's part of the thing, is you put that out there on this sort of universal grid, that it's like, yeah, that's possible. That can happen, and you can actually make a go of it, and you can live your life in a very different way. That in itself, I think, just like, you know, it's like sort of shakes people a little bit to just kind of think, holy cow, like, what? You know, you could actually make those types of changes and still live your life, and like everything didn't totally crumble and break apart and disintegrate into nothing. Where I think we have these fears that if we make too many changes outside of what we're comfortable with and what's normal, that things are just going to fall apart. But
and when that's done, it creates a different template. It puts out a different template.
It's possibility.
It's like the 4-minute mile. When one person achieves it and then news gets to other people, it creates a possibility for so many other people to make different changes that they previously conceived of as being impossible or not likely or highly likely. And then it comes within the realm of possibility.
Yeah.
But this is the big kicker is that no one can tell you what that is. You know, no one, no, I mean, I have so many people saying to me, like, can you, like, I've got this situation, like, do you think you can give me your advice? I'm just like, dude, that's not how this works anymore.
Yeah.
You know, I can't tell you how to live your life. You know, you have to do these things yourself, you know, and if you're inspired to make changes in your life, then whatever those changes are, and they're relative to you, then great. But, you know, you haven't got to copy someone else's lifestyle, because it might not work for you, because it's working for them. You know, so it's about us again. It's about coming back to what works. Like is our that's your sovereignty right there. You know, it's your choices. It's not someone else's choices. And I mean, I've always felt that I grow exponentially when I'm out of my comfort zones. When I'm comfortable and I'm sitting there watching Tottenham and I've got a pizza in my hand and I'm just sort of laying on the sofa, and this is very easy, this life, isn't it, you know? And then all of a sudden there's a massive pandemic scamdemic, and I lose my job and I lose my home, and I'm all of a sudden driving across fucking 3 countries in a hatchback with 2 kids and a pregnant woman and an unruly dog to go and set up life in a tent. And then all of a sudden, what the fuck are we going to get through this, you know? How are we going to get through this? And I've got to be honest, like, every time you overcome one of these little fears, you start to grow into your real power, you know. And I can't tell you how we're thriving, you know, and we're connecting with people, like-minded people like you, like, so quickly all the time now. There's communities everywhere. There's people growing their own food everywhere. There is trade. There is this buzz, this real buzz of what is possible. And I think when you sort of step into that, you get carried off, you get carried away with it, you know, carried away with the beautiful experience of this collective energy.
Beautiful. I think when we were speaking to Dr. Northrup, she referred to it as when you have the courage to step outside of the box and do that thing that is calling you forth, divine providence steps in. And it's that unknown that most of us are apprehensive about. But when we do function out of that place, there's this other energy that steps in, and it's exactly what you're speaking about. And that's the bubbling of inspiration and excitement that then drives us forth from then on.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to, you've got to overcome that fear a lot of the time. You've got to have the courage to step into them shoes. And like I say, there's a lot of people who, they're frightened of the unknown. They're frightened of what's out there, but it's so exciting. And if you think about our children, children ain't worried about what's around the corner.
Yeah.
They're just excited about absolutely fucking everything. And that is how we should live. If we're excited about, oh my God, I don't know anything about this place, how fun's that going to be? If that is how we start off, then we're opening ourselves to so much beautiful energy coming into us, as opposed to sort of going, oh, do you know, but how am I going to survive? And all these stuff, it's all frequency. So if we're on the right bandwidth, it's just gonna gravitate towards us. So simple, really. I know it's crazy.
No, it totally is, and it's such a good. I mean, we're fortunate we've got young kids too, so you see it so clearly. I mean,
Me too, yeah.
and it's exciting because it's like that's really been nurtured in them too, because we're well enough aware of it, at least as much as we can be, that we try to support and not put our own fears or limitations too much on there, and let them have their experience with it, and keep that creative spark constantly there, and that excitement, and that sort of magic alive. Which ultimately, it's like every time you see that, that's exactly what we want to be connecting back to.
And it's also contagious, the spark kind of feeds other sparks and creates bigger fires and flames and greater possibilities. And it's really our intention, and as far as why we're having these conversations with people like yourself too, to share different ways of doing things, so that it creates, more and more different templates of possibilities.
And we'll often play like, when for people that are just starting to kind of even explore that, and dip their toes in that sort of unknown fear that kind of comes up, we'd often start by playing a bit of a what if game. It'd be like, well, what if this, and so you start to kind of just allow yourself to have a fun, playful experience with the imagination, and it's like stoking the fire a little bit. And
like, what if we didn't have to work? You might start off with, what if I didn't have to work the 9 to 5? And then I remember at the time when Jason was working downtown, this is a few years ago when we started with this, he's like, what if I didn't have to drive, an hour and a half into work, an hour and a half back, and I could spend more time with the family? And I would respond to him, why the F not? Why the F not? Why the F not? And
so
then
the what if and why the fuck not?
Yeah.
And that was kind of the game that we would play back and forth.
Really,
and we'd literally just have fun, and we'd be laughing during the process of it. But it felt like just kept stoking the fire, until all of a sudden what would happen would then the next sort of real possibility starts to kind of open up to make that change, because we've been entertaining it. We've been putting energy into it. We've been focusing on it. And so really, it's a fun way for people to baby step their way through some of that too, I think.
And what's really important too is having this non-attachment to what it ultimately needs to look like. Because like for us, like what was important for me, and maybe Hannah might be able to relate to this on some level, as well as other moms and caregivers out there, but support was a big one for me. Like I wanted more support. Like I didn't want to feel like, we were living in this big house and this, out of town and kind of isolated and doing things on my own with 3 kids and a poor old dying dog. And I was feeling wiped, and it's like, I just wanted support. Like, what if I could have all the support that I needed every day of the week? And ultimately we ended up how our arrangement is right now, which I would have never said yes to or have imagined it even being a possibility at the time. I mean, we're living in a 2-story house where my parents are on the upper floor and we're on the lower floor. It's 2 completely separate suites. We have, our own kitchen, our own bedrooms on the different floors. And when the doors are closed, it's separate corridors. But in the morning, the girls wake up, and if they're downstairs sleeping with us on the same bed, we co-sleep. Like that's another thing. It's not the normal, but for us, it felt
No,
like
felt
Oh,
right.
that's
no, that is the normal. It is the normal. That's
Yeah.
another,
yeah,
that's another
we're
thing.
we're
It is the
talking
normal.
about it in order to create a new normal, because it's I love it. Like we love it.
Oh
The
man, that's my
sweetest
favorite thing.
times.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you could probably relate. The sweetest times with children, especially, are at nighttime, where they start
And in
to
the morning.
speak about
Oh,
their
and they're
day,
just
and there's cuddly,
cuddly.
and their tenderness comes out. And first thing in the morning, I mean, your introduction to the day is this, again, this sweetness and togetherness. And I mean, there's nothing like it. And I honestly feel like, bringing in the separate bedroom, the
Cry
needing
it
to
out.
cry it out, and even the strollers, rather than having the babies on us, even car seats within cars, rather than an arrangement of just being in the back seat and holding your baby to comfort them. I feel like all of these have either intentionally or unintentionally been ways to separate all of us from actually what feels the most supportive and the most soothing. But the arrangement that we have now, our parents are there and they get to have this really sweet, intimate relationship with their grandchildren. And it fuels my aging parents. They're in their mid 70s now. And it's completely supportive for us. And as my parents continue to age, we'll take more and more care of them. I mean, these are the times that we step in and we nurture them as well. I mean, it's such a sweet sort of arrangement that there's no template for.
Well, and it took a lot of, literally, I think, burning through a lot of these family patterns to be able to even be in a place that was a possibility.
And even I feel like in hindsight now, even our inkling to move to Mexico and to then come back after almost a year, a period away, it's this, we don't take each other for granted anymore. There's this now even more tenderness than there was before, more appreciation for each other.
More love.
Yeah, more love.
And
More love.
outside of that, like on a purely economical level, we're able to make things work so much more easily. We're able to help each other. Families are helping each other.
We cook together. We get to share meals together. We get groceries together. Like, this is partly around this idea around making different choices. Sometimes it's sort of like, well, what if we could do it like that? And what could maybe that even look like? How might my life be different? In what ways? And it's kind of neat because, I mean, that's not like that's an uncommon thing in a lot of other places in the world, but sort of from a Western perspective, it's like, you've made it when you move away from your parents, right? Now it's kind of like,
yes, he's gone.
Yeah.
now it's like, I don't know. That doesn't really feel like made it. Like, there was a quote we were reading the other day that said something around, success was having your white picket fence house and your expensive car and your all these kind of things. It was like, no, success, or however they described it, or you made it, is when you've got freedom and love and basically, and time. I think more of your own time. And so it's like this prioritizing of things.
Yeah, well, that's it for me. It's like, I don't want to be anywhere else. I mean, I like my own space as well, but I love being with my family. Sometimes we wish they had a mute button on the back of their heads. But I absolutely worship them, and it's not just them either. Like, I'd love to spend more time with my mum and my dad and Hannah's parents and stuff as well, but it's not possible. So your situation to me is like heaven. That would be heaven if I knew my mum and dad were upstairs and I could send the kids up. It would be amazing. It's beautiful. It really is. Really beautiful.
Yeah, it's been a pretty neat journey, but this is kind of like what we talked about from the beginning. It's just this
personal instructions, following our personal instructions.
And that was like we said, that wasn't really on the 10-year plan originally, that we were going to be doing that, but the way it sort of evolved and naturally, authentically felt really good inside of our bodies. It just, one thing led to another until eventually, and now, we're in this dynamic and we've got this big garden that we've created together, and we just put up a greenhouse together and we fenced it over. We've got chickens. So it's like, it's really cool to be able to actually all doing this together. You know, we were there the other day down in the garden, digging up like the rest of the potatoes and getting stuff. And the girls are down there, the grandparents are down there, the chickens are there. Like, it was just this really, it was this really warm feeling of just love and appreciation for the whole scenario.
And I mean, my father, he is in the stages of leukemia. He's had leukemia and it's come back with a stronger force recently. And, you know, he's a frail man, you know, all of 120 pounds soaking wet. And he's out there pounding away and with a real sense of purpose.
He has a sense of purpose and will that is
unbreakable.
no other.
And it's, you know, and there's a lot of healing going on too, because I didn't really have much of a relationship with my parents growing up. My grandparents raised my brother and I when we were in Iran. So when we left Iran over 30 years ago, almost 35 years ago, I felt like I was growing up with two strangers, them being my parents for a very long time. So this time that we have now towards the end of their life, you know, however long they're going to have to spend with me and their grandchildren, it's giving us some real opportunity to do some major healing as well, which is such a gift. Such a gift.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Danny, I think that was really awesome. That was a really fun conversation that we've been looking forward to having, and so appreciate you and what you're putting out in the world here too, and just who you are and what you've done. And like you said, kudos to your wife and your family. I love it. I think it's just beautiful, and I picture you guys all kind of in that yurt with chaos going on, but it's just that's the beauty of family sometimes.
Thank you for the opportunity to come and talk to you. I really appreciate it, and you know, I'm sure we'll stay in touch.
Absolutely. Danny, where can people follow us? I know you're on a couple of different channels and stuff, and you've got a website. Where can people learn a little bit more about your work? And I mean, you've got regular videos you put out, and I think have a lot of value for people to pay attention to.
And you recently stepped back into Twitter world to baptize that world. So share with us a little bit more of where people can find you.
Yeah, I went back into Twitter yesterday, funnily enough, and it was mainly just to sort of test some algorithms, just to see if there really is it's a free speech model over there. So, at the moment,
I think you hit on a lot of them on that last post, so we'll see what happens.
We'll pull it up here.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter. I'm Dear Danny11. Same as Instagram, Dear Danny11, and on Telegram it's Dear Danny. I've got a website. It's deardanny.co, and yeah, it's always fun. I'll give you. It's always a nice, fun message, and that's just one thing I would like to say quickly as well is that, you know, it's some heavy stuff going on in the world right now, you know, and a lot of people can feel that and they don't know what to do with that, and it sticks. And I think we have to really, really try our best now to really identify with the most humorous, fun, comical parts of ourselves, because that's what's going to get us through all this stuff, and it's going to get us through this stuff with laughter, you know, because we are taking it all a bit too seriously, even myself, and it's not that serious. You know, it might be if you really want to identify with the headlines and what's going on in the world, then yeah, it looks serious. But ultimately, we're just big bubbles of love floating along in a cosmic river, and we shouldn't really pay too much attention to it.
I love humor in the sense that I think there's nothing more powerful to change the context almost instantly of a situation than when you can find a good way to laugh around it.
Yeah,
it just shifts how you feel inside, and then it instantly lets you see the whole world from another perspective for a little while. So, you know, such a powerful way of being is to find more humor.
Yep.
Danny, much love to you, my friend, and we will stay in touch for sure.
Take care, and I wish your dad well, Tia.
Thank you.
See you later. Bye-bye.